The Mark of Justice. Chapter 1. The Past Never Dies. The neon glow of a flickering streetlight cast long, jagged shadows on the cracked pavement of South Side Chicago. Malcolm Mac Carter stepped out of his battered Ford pickup, his boots crunching against the gravel. The air smelled of rain and distant gasoline, a scent that always brought back memories of his time in the Middle East. He had been home for 5 years now, 5 years since his last mission as a Marine. Time had passed, but the war had never left him. It lingered in his bones, in the sleepless nights, and in the way his hand sometimes twitched near his hip where his knife used to be. Mac had returned to find his neighborhood in worse shape than when he left it. The South Side had always been tough, but now it was infested not with drugs or petty criminals, but with something fouler. A white supremacist gang calling themselves the Iron Sons. They had spread like a disease, taking over blocks, intimidating Black and Latino families, vandalizing businesses, and worse. Mac had seen the news stories of beatings, kidnappings, even murders. The police did nothing. Those who weren't corrupt were too afraid. Mac wasn't afraid. Chapter 2, The First Encounter. It started at Joe's Diner, a favorite spot from his childhood. Joe, an old Black man who had once served in Vietnam, had kept the place open despite the threats. But tonight, as Mac sat at the counter nursing a cup of black coffee, trouble walked through the door. 4 of them, shaved heads, leather jackets with the Iron Sons insignia, a skull with a burning cross behind it. They swaggered in, their boots heavy against the tiled floor, their eyes scanning the diner like wolves looking for prey. They spotted Joe first. "Old man," one of them sneered. "Didn't we tell you to close up shop? This ain't your neighborhood no more." Joe, steady as ever, wiped the counter with slow, deliberate movements. "This diner's been here longer than your daddy's been alive, son." The leader, a thick-set man with a scar running from his forehead to his cheek, grinned. "That's so? Maybe we ought to change that." Mac set his coffee down. "Maybe you ought to shut your mouth." The gang turned. Scarface studied Mac, his eyes narrowing. "And who the hell are you, boy?" Mac stood up. He wasn't the tallest man in the room, but there was something in the way he carried himself, something hard, something unbreakable. "I'm the guy who's gonna make you regret walking in here." The gang laughed, but there was hesitation in their voices. They had expected fear, not defiance. Scarface stepped closer. "You got a big mouth, old man." Mac unzipped his jacket and pulled up his sleeve. And that's when they froze. Chapter 3, The Tattoo. Ink covered Mac's forearm, a detailed, intricate tattoo of a coiled rattlesnake wrapped around a dagger. Beneath it, in bold script, read the words, "Dio Presso Liber." It was the motto of the U.S. Army Special Forces to free the oppressed. But that wasn't what made them freeze. It was the smaller mark beneath it, an insignia only a select few would recognize. A black eagle clutching a lightning bolt. Mac had been more than just a Marine. He had been part of a covert special operations unit, the kind of unit that didn't officially exist. He had fought in places the government denied being in. He had taken down warlords, terrorists, and worse. And the Iron Sons knew exactly what that meant. Scarface took a step back. "You," he swallowed. "You were one of them." Mac rolled his sleeve back down. "I still am." Chapter 4, The Reckoning. Scarface's hesitation lasted only a second. Then, like a panicked animal, he reached for the knife at his belt. Mac moved first. His hand shot out, grabbing Scarface's wrist and twisting it until the blade clattered to the floor. A quick elbow to the face sent the gang leader sprawling. The others reacted, but Mac was faster. He ducked the first punch, countering with a brutal hook to the ribs. The second thug came at him with a crowbar. Mac sidestepped and drove his knee into the man's stomach. The last one tried to run. Mac caught him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "Tell your people," he growled, his voice like gravel. "This neighborhood ain't yours. Not tonight. Not ever." The man nodded frantically, his face white with terror. Mac let him go. The gang scrambled out of the diner, dragging Scarface with them. Joe chuckled from behind the counter. "Still got that fight in you, huh?" Mac picked up his coffee and took a sip. Never left. Chapter 5. War Comes Home. The Iron Sons didn't take humiliation lightly. They came back 2 nights later, this time with more men, more weapons. They torched Joe's diner, beat up a local pastor, left threats spray-painted on Mac's truck. Mac didn't call the police. He called his brothers. They came in the dead of night, veterans like him, men who had fought and bled together overseas. Some were Army Rangers, others were Navy SEALs. All of them had seen war, and they were ready to bring it home. Chapter 6. The Final Stand. The Iron Sons gathered in an abandoned factory on the edge of town. They thought they were safe. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong. Mac and his team struck fast and hard. Smoke bombs rolled through the windows, plunging the place into chaos. Veterans moved like ghosts through the darkness, taking down gang members one by one. Scarface tried to run. Mac caught him. "This is our city," Mac said, pressing the barrel of his pistol against the man's forehead. "Tell your people." Scarface whimpered. "Please." Mac didn't shoot him. He didn't need to. By sunrise, the Iron Sons were gone. Some fled the state. Others turned up in police custody, beaten and bloodied, with anonymous tips leading officers straight to their hideouts. Southside Chicago was free again. Chapter 7. A New Dawn. The diner was rebuilt. The streets felt safer. People walked without fear. Max sat on his front porch, watching the sun rise. He knew the fight wasn't over. There would always be another battle, another enemy. But for now, his war was won, and he was home.